Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. Today's video is going to be on dizziness. Why do I feel dizzy? We're going to talk about the root causes physiologically on why you may be dizzy. Before we dive in, please smash that like button. Again, really helps the search algorithm. Put your comments down below about the topic and your thoughts on it and what's worked for you. Really always curious to know what's worked for other people. All right, so let's dive in. So when you feel dizziness, in conventional medicine terminology, a lot of times there's going to be association with a change in body position, whether it's bending over, standing up fast, and there's this orthostatic hypotension phenomenon that tends to drive a lot of it, right? So then you also just kind of have vertigo dizziness where you're just kind of always dizzy and it's non-positional based. So kind of have positional based vertigo, and then we have non-positional based vertigo. So the getting up, the standing up fast, the bending over, getting up out of bed. These are all going to be orthostatic position. You can kind of put POTS in that camp as well, right? Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. That's kind of an extreme adrenal example where they put you on a tilt table, then you put you back up, and then you get dizzy. Or you typically see a big drop in blood pressure. Typically, when you bend over, stand up fast, usually when there's a orthostatic component, usually there's a 10 millimeter of mercury drop or more when it's postural. So you'll see that big drop in blood pressure. And that's usually that blood pressure drop means you're not able to perfuse that blood flow up to the brain fast enough. Therefore, you feel dizzy. It's kind of like having your hose, the finger on like your thumb over the hose, right? That thumb kind of creates that pressure. And when you pull back on that, the water just kind of globs out. It doesn't project out. So it's that same thing. That higher blood pressure is like putting that thumb over the hose and it projects it out more. Now, when we look at a lot of the non-positional based vertigo, and there's also one other phenomenon on the positional side where there's different crystals, otolith crystals in the vestibular canals that can kind of be, stimulating some of the nerves in there. And you can kind of flush those out with some different BPPV techniques with tilting the head back, turning it, and then doing some percussion to kind of flush those crystals out. Now, on the non-positional side, where you have vertigo, a lot of vertigo symptoms can actually be exacerbated by gluten and autoimmune thyroid issues. So there's a big autoimmune component, food sensitivity, gluten component on that side. I've seen that time and time again. And again, a lot of times with these issues, there's going to be an electrolyte imbalance. Now, a lot of times electrolytes could be you're not consuming enough good, healthy sea salt, sodium chloride, magnesium, potassium. And usually you have magnesium, potassiums kind of on one side that you're really going to have to supplement. The other side, you're going to typically use a good sea salt, whether in your water or in your food, to maximize those good minerals. And so we have those two sides of the field playing. We also have good water and hydration being components. A lot of times electrolytes are carried through good water and hydration. And water is needed to keep our blood pressure up too, right? We need fluid in the system to actually keep the blood pressure up. And then on top of that, we need to be able to hold that fluid. So we have to make sure, one, we're hydrated enough, two, we're getting electrolytes, but three, we have to be able to hold it. So one of the hormones that's really important for that is aldosterone. Aldosterone is made by the adrenals, the outer portion of the adrenals, the glomerular portion. And that helps hold on to that makes the aldosterone. That aldosterone helps hold on to our minerals. So if we have a lot of adrenal dysfunction, and again, on one side we have the extreme, right? We have POTS or Addison's disease, which is going to be the extreme example. But then we have a lot of functional imbalances in between, where we may not have an ACTH test that is a problem, right? Meaning you give someone like a stimulation of ACTH or corticosteroid, you give it to them, you inject it, and you don't see a big increase in cortisol. That's one. Or just a overtly low level of cortisol in the morning, right? Where it's at a pathological range. And then conventional medicine, if you pass the ACTH stim, meaning you give some adrenaline, it shoots up your cortisol, you pass. Or if your cortisol serum in the morning isn't abnormally low outside of typically 2 or 3 standard deviations, usually you're fine. But then we know in functional medicine world, you can have some functional imbalances in between. You can have a cortisol rhythm test where you test your cortisol throughout the day, waking up an hour or two later in the afternoon, later at night. If you have a good, healthy cortisol rhythm that goes up in that first hour or two and then gently slopes down, that's a good sign. So you could definitely have cortisol issues where your cortisol numbers, free or total, may be okay, but that rhythm may be a little bit flatter. Or you may even have a reverse pattern where the numbers still look okay, but you're starting a little bit low, you go down and then you go up. Or you could be pinballing all throughout the day. It's possible that you're anywhere in between. You may even have free cortisol levels that look low and total cortisol that's normal. And free cortisol is typically not looked at by conventional medicine. Usually when you're running cortisol serum on the blood, usually that's looking at the total cortisol, which is 98% of all your cortisol, but the 2%, 2 to 5% that's free isn't really being looked at on the blood. Now, there's certain testing that we do, certain adrenal testing that we do that involves urine testing, peeing on strips throughout the day, and that can look at free and total cortisol, so we can get a window into both. And so that helps us, one, look at how much free and cortisol, how much free and total cortisol we have, and also give us a window of where's that cortisol level looking. Because when you're just taking one sample in the morning, it may look okay, but other times throughout the day, it may not look okay. And also, there's a stress response getting a needle stuck in your arm. Versus if you're just peeing on some strips, it's not as big of a deal. It's not as eliciting as much of a stress response with that. So big thing we got to do is first check is hydration. Second check is blood sugar stability. Are we eating good proteins and fats at each meal? Think of proteins and fats as logs on your metabolic fire. So if you're starting a fire, you have to put some logs on that fire. That keeps that fire going and burning strong. Most people are starting a fire with twigs and paper. And you know with twigs and paper on a fire, you'll be feeding it all day long. It's up, down, up, down, up, down. And this is partly what's going to happen with your adrenals if you don't have good proteins and fats on the fire. Now, once the proteins and fats are on the fire, you could throw some paper or twigs on there. Guess what happens? Not that big of a deal because you have those logs lit. And so you can adjust the paper or the twigs, i.e. carbohydrate, after the fact, but you want to have that good foundational protein and logs on the fire. Now, again, we also kind of elucidated out of the gates hydration and electrolytes. We talked about aldosterone playing a big role, and that's made by your adrenals. Also, diuretics can play a big role. Coffee, tea, alcohol. Alcohol inhibits ADH, and ADH works with aldosterone. ADH is your anti-diuretic hormone. So it's your anti-P hormone, right? It's your anti-P hormone. So when you knock out your ADH, it actually promotes peeing. So when you have low ADH, it promotes peeing, it promotes urinating. Everyone knows this. You drink some alcohol, right? Once you pop the seal, right, you're peeing all night long, right? Because that ADH is dropped. So you can have diuretics with alcohol via ADH. Caffeine's just a natural diuretic as well. And that's going to cause you to lose fluid while at the same time potentially losing electrolytes. And when you're chronically stressed, when you have this adrenal stress going on, even in Guyton's physiology, it shows that you will shunt out more potassium out of your urine. Because of that stress response, your body is using some of these minerals to buffer that stress, to buffer inflammation. These all play very, very important roles to what's going on. That's why when you look at the root cause is managing blood sugar stability. Why that? Because there's major stress put on your adrenal glands and your hormones. When your blood sugar is doing this all day, your body's having to make insulin and cortisol and adrenaline to buffer the highs and lows. When you go high, you're making a bunch of insulin. When you're making insulin, that actually causes you to hold on to fluids. Then you drop it. Blood sugar goes crashing low. And then you have a lot of aldosterone and cortisol. A lot of adrenaline and cortisol to pick it back up. And you're on this blood sugar roller coaster. And then when your blood sugar crashes, guess what you're craving? More junk, right? That's why, and on a bar, when you go to a bar, right? What's the first thing they do when you go to a bar or a restaurant? They try to give you what? Bread, some kind of a carby appetizer, and alcohol. Why? Because one, alcohol actually drops blood sugar, right? So alcohol drops blood sugar, and then you are on this blood sugar roller coaster of a lot of carbs, let's say bread. Blood sugar goes up, down. Now you're craving a lot. Now you're going to over-order food. Your eyes will be bigger than your stomach. So this is a common theme in restaurants. That's why you want to really have good proteins first. It's one of the big things out of the gate. And then also hydrate in between your drinks so you don't get electrolyte imbalances and dehydrated. So if we kind of recap everything, right? We have dehydration, so making sure we have enough water, making sure we pinch a little bit of sea salt in that water. In my line, we'll add extra potassium. I have a product called Potassium Synergy that's got about 1,300 milligrams of potassium to 130 on magnesium. I like that because most potassium products don't get over 100 milligrams. So you're taking 13 to 20 pills a day. It just becomes annoying. So the powder is nice to get the potassium up. We need 4,700-ish milligrams per day, according to the, I think it's to the FDA says that, or CDC, one of the major health organizations. So it's like 4,700 milligrams. Go run your food through chronometer. Most people aren't getting half of that. So, and half the population isn't even getting magnesium sufficiency. So potassium, magnesium is going to be a big one. Hydration, another one. Blood sugar stability, another one. We talked about vertigo type of dizziness, right? That's the other kind. That can be autoimmune based. A lot of studies on vertigo, vestibular issues, Hashimoto's, and vertigo. So gluten's a big one, gluten grains, autoimmune provoking foods in general, blood sugar issues. And then I would say on top of that, getting your adrenals looked at. So seeing where you fall within that adrenal cortisol pattern, because the weaker your adrenals are, typically the longer the problem's been going on and the more support you're going to need to kind of lift you back up. If you have very low free and total cortisol and you have a flat line, that kind of helps me to guide the patient. Hey, this is going to take a while to get better because we're pretty flatlined. Or if your adrenals look decent, then the adrenals may still need support, but there may be other issues we still have to look at that need to be supported as well. And also, if you have gut issues and you're not absorbing your nutrients, not absorbing your electrolytes, not ionizing your minerals because you have low stomach acid or poor gut absorption, these could all play a potential role. So this is the hard thing with functional medicine. When you're doing like research on the conventional medical side, you're typically controlling one variable, right? You have a control group that's just kind of doing their thing. Maybe they're giving an inert supplement or substance. Then you have the actual drug group or the experimental group where you're given the actual supplement or the drug. The problem with that is in functional medicine world, we're moving 4, 5, 6, 7 levers when we're trying to get people better because we want to do it fast and we want to get to the root cause. And we acknowledge there's a lot of inputs into this equation that's driving that person's symptoms and health imbalances, right? It's the upstream systems that are out of balance that trickles downstream to the symptoms. And that's where people, conventional docs, are just managing the symptoms versus going upstream to the systems. And so in conventional medicine world, studies work with just controlling one variable. The problem with conventional medicine is versus functional medicine, it'll take forever to fix a patient if you're only doing one variable at a time. So we try to look at all the inputs, really understand the person's history, what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't, what their daily routine looks like, where their stress is coming from, sleep, hydration, electrolytes, gut function, absorption, all that stuff matters because when we're trying to get someone better, we're moving 5 or 10 levers at the same time. And so that's the reason why conventional medicine tends to be a little bit slow with like data and research because it's hard to control one variable at a time. It really is. But it's good to look at the research because if you see, this one lever over here help this person, help this group of people. Okay, great. We make a note on that with gluten or maybe potassium, and then we add that into the greater treatment plan. So we're moving a lot of things at once so we can get patients better faster. That's really the goal. So again, this is Dr. J here. I hope you enjoyed today's video. When you have adrenal issues / dizziness, whether it's positional or non-positional, we want to look deep. We want to look at the adrenals, blood sugar, electrolytes. Of course, the blood sugar, electrolytes, all those things feed into the adrenals. So we want a complete overhaul and overlook of the whole situation, surveil the landscape so we can figure out what's going on so we can come up with a functional medicine program that addresses the root cause. And again, if you want to reach out to myself and staff, I'll put a link down below where you guys can reach out if you need more help in functional medicine support worldwide. I hope you enjoyed today's info. Let me grab a couple of questions here. Okay. I developed a rocking sensation, swaying sensation a few weeks back, never associated with adrenal function. I have adrenal fatigue. So I'm not sure what you mean by swaying, meaning like, I'm just trying to think, like, is this like where you sway and you get dizzy, or is it more something where it's a neurological kind of sway? Like a Parkinsonian thing or something where there's a vestibular basal ganglia issue. I'm not sure what you mean, but yeah. So when you have adrenal issues, of course, you're going to have all kinds of weird potential twitching as well in the muscles because those muscles need that sodium potassium pump to work. That's how we have cellular communication. That's how the cells work. And if we have low electrolytes, low sodium, or low potassium, then we're not going to have good cellular communication and function, and your muscles may not work well. You may experience cramping or fasciculations where you're looks like you have a little pulse underneath your muscle. Some people maybe notice it. They don't get good night's sleep. Their eye twitches. Like you feel a twitch. It's kind of like that. Yeah. So impacts on coffee. I think I already mentioned that. Coffee is a diuretic. Alcohol is a diuretic. Alcohol inhibits ADH. That's your anti-pee hormone. So when you lower your anti-pee hormone, then you start to pee, right? That's what kind of happens there. So you're going to lose water. And then with water, you're going to lose electrolytes, especially sodium. And again, if sea salt tends to help you, it makes you feel better. It tells me that it's probably more of a sodium chloride kind of thing. Again, for sea salt, I like Redmond's real salt because it has sodium chloride. It's pretty soluble if you get the fine grade one. And there's about 60 or 70 other trace elements in there. So it's a really good whole food, complete type of sea salt. And then for like potassium, magnesium, I use my potassium synergy. I like that because of the higher dose on the potassium, better than taking 10 or 20 pills a day, which becomes a little bit annoying. So I hope that makes sense. I'll put links down below for products so you guys can see what I recommend and what I personally use. Again, hope you enjoyed today's video. And again, if you have issues like this, start from the foundation, work your way out, start with the simple things, go out. That tends to give you the best chance of success. And again, if you enjoyed today's video, feel free and share with friends or family, guys. All right, have an awesome